So now that you know how to set up your Cinema 4D settings to match your After Effects settings, let's go ahead and actually integrate a Cinema 4D object into an After Effects composition. So here I have set up a illustration that I've made in Illustrator. And as you can see, I have it set up with a camera and a null object so that I get a parallax effect. And so the elements in the front are moving faster than the elements in the back, and hopefully we're getting this kind of sense of a landscape with the distance. And so what I want to do is integrate a shape into this. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and let's go ahead and go into Cinema 4D. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new Cinema 4D file. I'm going to go into, I'm going to call it Logo Landscape, and I'm going to replace it. And I'm going to give you a tour of how this the navigation and how the interface works. Okay, so this main window right here is called the viewport. This top right window here is called the Objects panel, and you can see objects right there. There are other panels, but this one is by default Objects. Down here, this is the Attribute panel, and you can see the Attributes tab there. There are other tabs, but we're going to stay on Objects and Attributes. And down here is a Material panel. You can also see this right here is a timeline, and it's expanded as we have in the past. All right, so the viewport, you see there's a red, green, and blue, an X, Y, and Z, and it's always in that order: red, green, blue, X, Y, Z. And you can see down here on the bottom left, there's a little model. Each time there's a little arrow, that indicates that's the positive direction of X. So if you need to move something positively, you go with the arrow. If you need to move something negatively, you go against the arrow. And so that's going to help you navigate what direction to move everything in. Up here on the top, these is your create objects. You can see you can create lights, cameras. These are just binned objects, lots of other functions. We're going to start right here, and if you click and hold it down, you can see there's discs, tourists, pyramids, all sorts of funky things. I'm going to go ahead and start with this thing called an oil tank. Now, once you've created an object, you're actually going to see it up here in the Object panel, and you're also going to see it down here in the Attributes panel. And in the Attributes panel, by default, you can see this tab for coordinates is open, and coordinates basically is where its starting point is. The object itself here is the qualities of this, so you can change the height of it. So I can move the height. I can play with the cap height, so I can make it a little more rounded. And so here I can play with the kind of the elements that help create that object. We don't have slices yet, so let's just note here that the coordinates and the object are what we're going to be working with. So you can see both on the coordinates and objects that there are these little dots, and these are in fact kind of like your stopwatch that creates keyframes. So I'm going to go back to coordinates, and I'm going to make this stand up. There's a couple different ways that you can do that. Up here are your navigations, so you can use the Move tool, the Scale tool, and the Rotate tool, and their shortcuts are E, R, and T. And they're not in order right here, but E, R, T is right next to each other on the keyboard, so it's also really nice to just have your fingers on that. So I'm going to press E for rotate, and I'm going to rotate it up 90 degrees. And I can dial it in right here. Now, if you press space bar, what that will do is it will bring you back to the selection tool. And if you press space again, it'll bring you back to the tool that you just used. So So spacebar hops you between selection and the tool you just used. So what I want to do is I want to make this be kind of like a sun that's setting in that landscape. So I want to arrange this viewport so it kind of makes sense for the scale and direction of the sun. So in order to change your view, you go up to these areas right here. If you just click on it and drag where it is, that is pan, that's the one on the left. The middle one is zoom, and this one is orbit. So if you want to kind of get a sun in relationship to that landscape, I might want to lower this horizon line and orbit it up. So that kind of makes it look more like the sun is in relationship to the landscape. You're looking up at the sun. Okay, so you can orbit it. So basically whatever view you have here is going to apply into the view you get over there. Okay, so I'm going to now reposition this. So I'm going to start, we have the position of X, Y, and Z. I'm going to raise this position up, and I'm going to have this come in. So I'm actually going to start off screen, and I'm going to start by putting a keyframe. Now I'm going to move my slider in. I'll move it into, let's say, 80, and then I can move this yet again. Let's say about right there. And then I will click it again and add another keyframe. So now I have a moving object. So if I want to, I haven't really added a material to it, so let's just do something quick. I'm going to load material presets, select light, materials. For now, let's just make this a glossy, I'll make it a white glossy, and I'll drag this up so it kind of has a little glint to it. And now all I need to do is save this and move back to After Effects. And you'll see that the origin has changed its orientation to match the viewport. And as I play with this, it'll take a second to render. Let's actually put it down to, yep, it says draft is it going to be. So it's going to be a bit, I'm not going to make you wait for the whole thing. But what you will see is that the object is slowly coming down. A 3D object is slowly coming down into place.